before gods ruled the heavens, before men even walked the earth. The cosmos may have belonged to giants. Not giants as in fairy tales, but celestial titans, the architects of stars, time, and fate itself. These weren't just myths, they were warnings, a forgotten history buried in stone, in sky, in blood. They appear in the oldest myths, etched in clay tablets, whispered across windswept deserts, and carved into mountains. Civilizations feared them, priests worshipped them, and somewhere deep in our DNA, we may remember them. Grab your copies of Myths from Mesopotamia, the Greek myths, and the Rig Veda, all linked below. Because today, we go beyond legends. We ask, what if these giants were real? What if the gods came from the stars? Let's rewind time, not by centuries, but by epochs. In the mythic blueprint of early human civilizations, we see them over and over again. Beings of impossible scale. In Greece, they were the Titans, massive, ageless deities who shaped the earth and defied the Olympians. These beings weren't just godlike. They were the skeleton beneath Olympus. Gaia, Uranus, Cronus, each with dominion over a force so primal, it bordered on physics, earth, sky, time. The Greeks envisioned their world as structured on the backs of titanic principles embodied by sentient beings. The Titanomachy, their great war, was more than a battle. It was the reshaping of reality, the celestial revolution that brought order to chaos. Zoom out to India, where the Vedas chronicle vast cosmic epics and battles. Varaha, the boar-headed avatar of Vishnu, plunges into primordial waters to rescue the earth. Bhudevi, from the demon Hiranyaksha. This isn't just heroism, it's planetary resurrection. In some versions, Varaha's tusks cradle the entire earth, and his roar realigns the heavens. He is a creature of immeasurable size, his very breath causing monsoons. These myths encode cycles of creation, destruction, and renewal that predate most modern calendars. Travel west to Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. The Anunnaki, whose name literally means those who came from heaven to earth, are not gods in the typical sense. They were described as judges, engineers, and keepers of destiny. The Sumerians didn't just worship them, they obeyed them. Myths suggest they altered rivers, dictated kingship, and built ziggurats as landing platforms. The Epic of Gilgamesh implies that contact with them could bestow immortality or madness. Further south in sub-Saharan Africa, we encounter tales of Chwezi spirits, ethereal giants who governed kingdoms and disappeared into the clouds. In Mesoamerican cultures, sky serpents like Quetzalcoatl were depicted with bodies long enough to encircle the earth, blending serpentine motifs with celestial movement. He wasn't just a feathered god, he was astronomy personified. And in Polynesian legends we hear of Tangaroa, the god of the sea and sky, whose massive body moved like tectonic plates, causing islands to rise and fall with his moods. What unites these traditions is not just their belief in the existence of cosmic giants, but their integration into architecture, agriculture, and astronomy. These beings weren't just remembered, they were mapped. Ziggurats in Uruk align with Venus. The Giza pyramids point to Orion's belt. Angkor Wat echoes Draco. Göbekli Tepe, the oldest temple on Earth, predates writing, but not astronomy. And every culture that built such monuments spoke of beings who taught them how. These weren't mere stories. These were architectural origin myths used to explain pyramids, ziggurats, and sky-oriented temples that modern engineers still puzzle over. Across the globe, megaliths stand aligned to stars we no longer see. But someone or something did. Perhaps the clearest message encoded in these structures isn't about worship, it's about memory. These temples were time capsules, star maps, warnings. In Norse myth, the frost giant Ymir was not just the ancestor of all giants. He was the raw material of existence. His flesh became land, his blood, the oceans, his skull, the sky, and his brain, the clouds. The gods didn't just defeat him, they repurposed him. Imagine the act of killing a universe-sized being only to recycle its body as the fabric of your own dimension. This myth isn't isolated. In Babylonian cosmology, the chaos dragon Tiamat, a being so immense she gave birth to monsters from her spine, is torn in half by the god Marduk. Her carcass is stretched into the dome of the sky while her eyes become rivers. It's grotesque, powerful, and disturbingly precise. In the Rig Veda, the primordial being Purusha is sacrificed by the gods. His body forms the universe and society. Cosmology becomes a blueprint for caste. The ancients weren't just imagining beings, they were explaining the inexplicable. By giving the universe a body, a pulse, a death, they gave it purpose. If you want to go deeper, check out the texts below. Daly, Graves, and Doniger didn't just interpret myths, they decoded blueprints. Now we leave myth behind, or do we? For centuries, scholars, mystics, and scientists have noticed something strange. The myths of giants sound less like metaphor and more like memory. A memory of beings not from this earth. Enter the ancient astronaut theory. This controversial idea suggests that the celestial giants in our myths were not deified metaphors, but visitors, biological or technological entities from other worlds who came down, influenced early human societies, and left their mark in stone, genetics, and scripture. Let's start with the Anunnaki. Ancient Sumerians claimed these beings came from the heavens, the Duku, a term referring to the cosmic mountain in the sky. The Anunnaki supposedly gave humans tools of kingship, measurement, and celestial timing. But why would pre-Bronze Age farmers invent a caste of gods who descend from the stars to regulate calendars? Then there's the Book of Enoch. It speaks of 200 watchers, celestial beings who descended upon Mount Hermon. They taught humanity metallurgy, medicine, and astronomy, but they also bred with human women, producing the Nephilim, described as giant hybrids with insatiable appetites. The result: flood, cataclysm, cleansing. These are not vague spiritual metaphors, these are technical transactions. Forbidden knowledge, DNA experimentation, hybrid warfare. In Vedic literature, the sky chariots, Vimanas, were not just poetic flourishes. Texts describe dimensions, propulsion systems, and aerial battles with terrifying detail. Why do so many ancient Sanskrit hymns sound like mission logs? Let's shift to Africa. The Dogon tribe of Mali knew about Sirius B, a white dwarf invisible to the naked eye, long before European astronomy confirmed its existence. The Dogon claim their knowledge came from the Nomo, fish-like celestial beings who descended in spinning vessels to bring order and language. In the Americas, we find the Nazca lines, massive geoglyphs only visible from the air. Theories suggest they were created as landing markers for aerial visitors. Meanwhile, Mesoamerican deities like Quetzalcoatl are depicted flying among the stars, wearing helmets and wielding rods of power. Even ancient Egypt, whose pyramids align perfectly with Orion's belt, speaks of the Benben stone, a flying object that housed the creator god Atum. According to temple lore, it descended from the heavens at the dawn of time. Coincidence or convergence? When so many disconnected civilizations describe colossal sky beings, strange starcraft, forbidden knowledge, and planetary upheaval, we must ask, were they all hallucinating the same thing or remembering the same thing differently? Some scientists argue that these beings may not have been physical at all. They propose a form of ultra-terrestrial intelligence, beings capable of phase shifting between dimensions. To Bronze Age eyes, these would look like giants, like gods. Others suggest a phenomenon even stranger: genetic memory, that myths are not just cultural but inherited, passed not through language but biology. What if the stories of sky giants weren't told to us? but coded into us. A deeper dive into ancient cave art, from Chauvet in France to Serra da Capivara in Brazil, shows strange figures, disproportionately large, with elongated limbs and radiant halos. These aren't hunters or animals. These are beings seen through firelight and fear. In China, the Yellow Emperor, Huangdi, descended from the stars in a dragon-shaped machine and returned to the heavens after imparting knowledge. In Japan, the gods of Shinto cosmology arrive in skyboats and measure creation in dimensions. Why do so many origin gods descend? Now consider the Zohar, a foundational Kabbalistic text which speaks of primordial kings who ruled worlds before ours and were shattered to make room for creation. These beings, massive and incomprehensible, were sealed away, their remnants lingering in the spiritual DNA of humanity. This isn't just a fringe theory, it's a global pattern. The myths are too aligned, the symbolism too identical. We're not talking about cultural diffusion, we're talking about a common origin point, an event horizon where history, biology, and cosmology blur. As the evidence mounts, from genetic anomalies and architectural impossibilities to cross-cultural consistency, one conclusion looms. The myths of celestial giants may not be fantasy. They may be redacted history. Every myth of giants ends the same way, with exile. From Prometheus to Atlas, from Ravana to the Nephilim, each celestial figure is either imprisoned, destroyed, or cursed. Why? Because the moment they challenge divine order, they fall. Let's begin with Greek mythology. Prometheus, a titan who gave fire, technology, intellect to humans, is chained to a rock and tortured for eternity. Atlas, who led the Titan rebellion, is condemned to hold up the sky. Even Typhon, the monstrous last son of Gaia, is buried beneath Mount Etna. These are not stories about triumph. These are containment protocols. In Hindu lore, Ravana is a genius, a master of science and devotion. But his arrogance, his refusal to bow, leads to his destruction by Vishnu's avatar, Rama. His kingdom, Lanka, described in the Ramayana, with gold towers and airborne vehicles, burns. In the Book of Enoch, the Watchers violate the law by teaching forbidden arts to mankind. Their hybrid offspring, the Nephilim, ravage the earth. The punishment? A flood. The Watchers are cast into an abyss. It's not just divine wrath, it's a cleanup operation. Even Norse mythology warns us. Loki, part giant, manipulates the gods until his betrayal at Ragnarok. Fenrir, the monstrous wolf child, is bound with magical chains. The message is universal: do not let them roam. So why are giants always the villains? Because they represent something uncontainable. Knowledge, power, deviation from divine protocol. Some theorists suggest that these myths preserve a record of rebellion, not just of hubris, but of bioengineered revolt. What if the giants were experiments gone wrong? Creations that defied their makers? Ancient texts often describe them as fallen. But fallen from where? What if fall means falling through dimensions, from celestial frequency to earthly form, from energy to matter, from creators to monsters? Now look at the built environment. Vast monoliths buried under jungle and sand, aligned to ancient equinoxes. Megaliths so large they defy current technology. Were they temples or prisons? Mount Hermon, where the Watchers fell, is a real place. Megiddo, the prophesied site of Armageddon, is nearby. What if these sites are not just symbolic, but tactical? Could the fall of giants be a literal event? The crashing of celestial craft, the collapse of great civilizations, the sealing of gates? Ancient stories speak of weapons of terrifying power, like Brahmastra in Hindu texts, which sounds eerily like nuclear detonation, or Zeus's thunderbolts, which split mountains. These weren't metaphors. They were warnings. And perhaps the greatest warning of all, the giants may rise again. In Revelation, the great beast reawakens. In Ragnarok, the bindings break. In Hopi prophecy, the Kachinas return. This isn't just mythology, it's a countdown. So, were the celestial giants just myth? Or were they the first architects of civilization? We'll let you decide. But we're not done. If this video expanded your mind, wait until you meet the God who rewrote the universe itself. Click over to the next chapter, Marduk's Cosmic Conquest, unraveling the astral enigma. What he did to Tiamat wasn't just war, it was galactic engineering. Join us there. The real story is just beginning.